People always ask me the same question. What's the worst monster you've ever hunted? They're asking the wrong question. The worst monsters are usually easy to find. They're loud, violent, hungry. They leave bodies hanging from trees or drag campers into caves. Those hunts are simple. You know where the predator is. The dangerous ones leave nothing behind. No blood, no screams, no evidence, just questions. I've learned something after 17 years with the Order. Every monster leaves a trail. You just have to know what kind. The black rotary phone rang at exactly 4:03 a.m. One sharp metallic bell, nothing more. The phone had no dial tone, no caller ID, no power cord, no manufacturer. It had been passed from one senior hunter to the next for almost a century. No one knew who built it, only that it never rang without reason. I answered before the second ring. Talk. Static, not ordinary static. Ocean static, wind, waves. Then Mercer's voice. Ash. He sounded exhausted. Not physically, mentally, like someone who'd spent 3 days trying to convince himself he wasn't losing his mind. I need your help. I leaned back in my chair. You quit. I did. So why call me? A pause. Because I don't think this is over. I stood and walked toward the wall where dozens of maps covered the cabin. Each pin marked a hunt. Each black thread connected incidents the Order insisted were unrelated. I stopped at Florida. One red pin, Briar's Hollow. What happened? 3 fishing boats disappeared. Weather? Clear. Storm surge? No. Pirates? No. I uncapped a marker. Continue. The Coast Guard launched a rescue. How many aboard? 8. I wrote the number. They disappeared too. I stopped writing. When? 4 days ago. I frowned. 4 days? Yeah. You should have called sooner. I didn't think you'd believe me. I would have. I didn't believe me. 6 hours later, I crossed the bridge into Cedar Key. Something felt wrong before I even parked. Fishing towns wake early. Engines, voices, gulls, ice trucks. Instead, the marina sounded abandoned. Dozens of boats rocked gently against the docks, untouched. Nobody was preparing for the morning tide. Even the pelicans had abandoned the pilings. Wildlife notices predators long before humans do. I found Mercer sitting on the tailgate of his truck. He looked older than 3 weeks ago. Dark circles beneath both eyes. Fresh stubble, a healing cut across one cheek. He stood as I approached. You came. You sounded convinced. I am. You bring evidence? Without saying a word, he handed me a waterproof evidence bag. Inside was a handheld marine radio. Scratched, salt-stained, still functional. Recovered from the rescue boat. When? Yesterday. Anybody listen to it? Everybody. What did they hear? Mercer hesitated. You should hear it yourself. We climbed into the truck. He pressed play. Static filled the cab. Then, a calm female dispatcher. Coast Guard Station Cedar Key, report your status. A man's voice answered. Professional, relaxed. Rescue 7 approaching target. Static. Wind, footsteps. Then another voice. Confused. Cap. There's a lighthouse out here. The captain laughed. You're looking at a drilling platform. No, sir. A pause. I don't think I am. Another 30 seconds passed. Then someone whispered, Who built that? The recording crackled violently. The captain spoke again, much quieter this time. Dispatch! That lighthouse isn't on the chart. Mercer looked at me. I didn't say anything. The recording continued. Heavy footsteps, metal clanging, someone breathing faster. Then, a foghorn, long, deep, powerful enough to rattle the radio speaker. Every man aboard stopped talking, finally. One voice whispered, "Did somebody just call my name?" The captain answered, "What? I swear, I just heard my wife." Another crewman interrupted, "My daughter's crying." The captain barked, "Nobody gets off this boat." Silence, then a splash. Someone had jumped. Another splash. Another. Another! The captain screamed, "Get back here!" Gunfire erupted. 3 shots, then one final transmission. So quiet I almost missed it. "Something's under..." The recording ended. Mercer turned the radio off. The truck was silent. Finally he asked, "What do you think?" I stared through the windshield toward the harbor. "I think whatever we're hunting already understands people." The Coast Guard had released the rescue boat that morning. Officially, they found nothing unusual. Unofficially, the moment I stepped aboard, I counted 19 things that bothered me. Hunters don't begin by looking for monsters. We begin by eliminating impossible explanations. No signs of piracy, no bullet impacts, no blood, no struggle, no storm damage, no mechanical failure. Then I noticed the coffee mugs. 8 mugs. Everyone still sitting where it had been left. Not broken, not spilled. The coffee had dried into black rings. That told me something. Whatever happened fast, very fast. Nobody had time to react. I knelt beside the port rail. There they were, scratches, hundreds of them, each one no longer than my little finger. Not random, parallel, almost delicate. Mercer crouched beside me. "Claws?" I shook my head. "No." "What then?" I ran my fingertip across one groove. Too smooth, too shallow. "Teeth." Mercer frowned. "What bites steel?" I looked across the open gulf. "Something that's been doing it for a very long time." I photographed every mark. Measured the spacing, exactly 1 3/4 inches apart, perfectly consistent. That meant adult dentition. Healthy, no broken teeth, no deformities. One animal, not a pack. Already the picture was becoming clearer. Large, marine, highly intelligent, curious enough to investigate metal, strong enough to leave marks, patient enough not to attack immediately. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The bite marks only appeared on the side of the boat facing open water. Not one scratch faced the harbor. I smiled. Mercer noticed. "Why are you smiling?" "Because now I know where it came from." He looked confused. "I don't. It didn't board the boat." I stood. "It approached from deep water." He waited. So every monster leaves a trail." I pointed at the untouched harbor side. "This one left us a direction." I looked out toward the endless gulf. Somewhere beyond the horizon, something had learned that the easiest prey in the ocean was the species that always came when someone cried for help. Every rookie hunter wants to know the same thing. How do you kill it? They ask that before they've ever seen the creature, before they've learned where it sleeps, what it eats, how it moves, how it thinks. That's why rookies don't last long. A hunter who worries about killing before understanding usually becomes food. Luis refused to take the boat any farther. I couldn't blame him. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the ignition key trying to restart the engine. It still wouldn't turn over. Battery was good, fuel pressure was normal. Starter engaged. The propeller simply refused to spin. Almost like something beneath the hull had wrapped itself around the shaft. I didn't lean over the rail. Mercer noticed. "You think it's still down there?" "I think it wants us to look." "You can tell that?" "No." I looked at the perfectly still water. But every predator tests curiosity. We launched the emergency skiff. Old aluminum, 15-foot hull. Enough room for 2 people and our gear. Luis stayed behind. I'll wait. You won't. He frowned. What? The second that engine starts, head back to shore. I'm not leaving you. You are. Mercer looked between us. You expecting us not to come back? I tightened the strap on my rifle. I'm expecting the Predator to adapt. The fog thickened with every stroke of the outboard. Within minutes, the fishing boat disappeared behind us. The world became gray. Sound changed first. The engine no longer echoed across open water. Instead, every noise seemed swallowed, like we were traveling through fresh snow instead of sea air. Mercer checked the GPS on blank screen, compass, spinning, satellite phone, no signal. He sighed. Let me guess. I nodded. Threshold interference? Maybe. You don't sound convinced. I'm not. He looked at me. I thought that's what hunters did. No. What? We rule things out. The lighthouse emerged so gradually it almost looked like the fog was building it. First the light, then the upper gallery, then the weathered stone tower. Finally, the base. Mercer lowered the binoculars. It really doesn't have an island. It didn't. The structure rose directly from the water. No visible foundation, no rock, no reef. Only black seawater disappearing beneath ancient stone. I pulled out my camera, not to photograph the lighthouse, to photograph the waterline. Mercer noticed. Why? If somebody built this, there should be erosion. He looked. Nothing. No barnacle line, no tide marks, no weathering, almost as if the ocean had always accepted the structure. The dock wasn't old. That surprised me. Pressure-treated lumber. Modern bolts, marine-grade rope. Someone had repaired it within the last 20 years. I knelt. Fresh gouges scarred the wood. 4 parallel claw marks. Deep, powerful. Mercer crouched beside me. The Drake? Probably. You keep saying probably. Because certainty gets hunters killed. I measured the spacing. Exactly the same as the bite marks on the rescue boat. Same animal. Inside. The lighthouse smelled wrong. Not mildew, not rot. Copper, blood, old blood, hundreds of gallons of it. Not fresh. Absorbed into the stone over decades. Mercer swept his flashlight across the walls. They're covered in scratches. No. I walked closer. Knife marks. Thousands of them. Every hunter develops habits. Some sharpen blades, some carve initials, some count days. These weren't random. Someone had been carving lines into the walls. Groups of 5. Again. 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 Mercer quietly counted. 700. 8. 9. He stopped. Somebody was keeping time. No. I pointed to the oldest marks. Multiple people. The cuts changed angle, changed depth, changed height. Different hands, different knives, same wall. The realization settled over both of us. Hunters had been stationed here for years, maybe decades. The first room contained bunks, military style, 8 beds, rusted lockers, an old diesel generator, everything abandoned in a hurry. Mercer opened one locker. Inside hung a faded rain jacket. On the chest, a patch. Not Coast Guard and not Navy. A spear crossing a compass. The Order. He looked at me. You've got a base out here. I didn't know we did. You think they forgot to mention it? No. I stared at the empty bunks. I think they wanted it forgotten. Then I found the map. Yellow with age. Pinned beneath a broken lantern. The Gulf Coast filled the page. Dozens of handwritten circles, each marked with dates every few years. A different location offshore. Mercer frowned. What are we looking at? I traced the circles with my finger. Attacks. You sure? No. I flipped the page over. One sentence had been written in careful block letters. It never hunts the same water twice. Mercer looked up. So it migrates. I shook my head. No. What then? It exhausts an area. He stared. Meaning? It hunts until people stop coming. The room fell silent, once the disappearances become too noticeable. Boats avoid the area. No prey. The drake moves. Finds another stretch of coastline. Starts again. Not because it's wandering, because it's farming. It had learned the most terrifying lesson any predator could learn. Humans. Always send more humans. A loud metallic clang echoed somewhere below us. Not random. 3 strikes, evenly spaced. Mercer raised his rifle. You hear that? I did. You think it's the drake? I listened. Nothing. Then, a 4th clang. Closer. Deliberate. I smiled. Mercer rolled his eyes. You're smiling again. It wants us downstairs. So we don't go. No. I switched off my flashlight. What are you doing? If a predator expects prey to move toward a sound, I began walking in the opposite direction. That's where it won't be waiting. For the first time since we'd arrived, the clicking stopped. I had just done something it hadn't predicted. And somewhere in the darkness, I realized the siren drake had stopped hunting. It was thinking. There are 2 moments in every hunt. The first is when you find the monster. The second is when the monster realizes you figured it out. That's when the roles change. One of you becomes the hunter. The other becomes desperate. The lighthouse had gone quiet. Too quiet. Mercer stood beside me, listening. I don't hear it. Neither do I. Isn't that a good thing? No. I looked toward the staircase. A predator this successful doesn't make mistakes. I knelt beside one of the claw marks gouged into the floor. The grooves were fresh. Water still pooled inside them. I followed them with my flashlight. They didn't continue toward the lower level. They circled. Again. And again. Around the central staircase. Mercer frowned. It's pacing. No. I pointed to the spacing. The tracks overlap. So? It's making the same circuit. He looked confused. It isn't patrolling. It's waiting. I closed my notebook. Mercer. Yeah? What happens when rescue crews stop coming? He shrugged. It finds new prey. Exactly. I looked around the abandoned station. So why stay here? Mercer's expression slowly changed. Because this works. The lighthouse wasn't a home. It was a trap, a perfect trap. Distress calls, fog, a visible landmark. Humans did the rest. For decades, people had come willingly. The siren drake had never needed to chase its prey. A wet clicking echoed from above us. Not below, above. Mercer whispered, It switched levels. No. I looked toward the lantern room. It switched tactics. We climbed slowly. No flashlights, no talking. Only the sound of waves crashing far below, halfway up the staircase. I stopped. What? I pointed. A trail of water, fresh, leading upward. Mercer started following it. I grabbed his shoulder. No. Why? Look closer. He crouched. The droplets were evenly spaced. Perfectly even, like someone had poured them from a bottle, not the erratic pattern an animal would leave. It made that. Yes? To trick us. I nodded. It wants us looking up. Mercer slowly turned his flashlight toward the ceiling instead. Nothing. Then he looked down. His face drained of color. Ash! The siren drake wasn't above us. It was beneath the staircase. Curled tightly around the central support column, nearly invisible in the darkness, its pale gray skin blended perfectly with the stone. Only its eyes reflected the faint light. It had anticipated exactly where we'd look. I smiled. There you are. The drake exploded upward. It hit the railing with enough force to tear iron from the stone. Mercer dove sideways. I fired once. Not at the creature. At the lantern overhead. The enormous Fresnel lens shattered. Thousands of razor-sharp shards rained through the tower. The drake recoiled instinctively, shielding its eyes. Just as I'd hoped, predators that hunt in darkness protect their vision. It wasn't afraid of bullets, it was afraid of blindness. Now! I shouted. Mercer ignited a marine flare. The brilliant crimson light flooded the staircase. The drake screamed, not in pain, in disorientation. Its pupils collapsed into thin black slits. It thrashed violently, smashing chunks of stone from the walls. I didn't shoot again, not yet. Instead, I watched. Hunters don't waste opportunities to learn. The creature wasn't attacking. It was trying to escape the light. Another note for the manual. The drake burst through a side passage. I followed. Mercer yelled after me. Ash! Stay behind me! The tunnel sloped downward toward the sea. The air grew colder. The smell changed. Salt. Blood. Decay. Then, the tunnel opened into an enormous flooded cavern. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Bones. Hundreds of them. Human skeletons, still wearing fragments of life jackets, fishing boots, military gear, Coast Guard uniforms, decades of victims. The siren drake had dragged every kill back here, not out of cruelty, out of instinct. Predators returned to successful feeding grounds. This was its den. Mercer whispered, "My God." I slowly scanned the cavern. Something didn't fit. Among the human remains lay another skeleton, nearly 14 feet long. Massive ribs. A skull unlike anything I'd ever seen. 4 enormous fangs. Clawed forelimbs almost twice the size of the drake's. Mercer stared. "What is that?" "I don't know." The bones were ancient, scarred, heavily damaged. One forelimb had been torn completely away. The siren drake hadn't eaten it. It had fought it. A growl echoed behind us. The drake stood at the mouth of the cavern. Blood still trickled from the wound in its shoulder. It stared at us, not charging, watching, waiting. Then its head snapped toward the darkness beyond the underground lake. Its muscles tightened. Its entire posture changed. Not hunting, alert. The same way deer stop grazing when they smell wolves. Mercer noticed it too. "What's it looking at?" "I don't know." And that frightened me more than anything I'd seen all day. A deep vibration rolled through the water, not a splash, not movement, a vibration. Every ripple in the cavern began traveling in the same direction, toward the darkness. The drake took one slow step backward, then another, never taking its eyes off the black water. Mercer whispered, "It's scared." "No," I swallowed. "It respects something. There's a difference. Predators don't survive by fearing everything. They survive by recognizing the few things capable of killing them. Something moved beneath the water. Huge, far too huge. We never saw its body, only the wake, slowly circling. The drake gave one final warning growl, then disappeared into a submerged tunnel. It wasn't fleeing us. It was avoiding whatever had just entered the cavern. I made the only decision a hunter should make. "We leave." Mercer didn't argue. We sprinted back through the tunnels. Neither of us looked behind. Some mysteries can wait. Survival comes first. As we burst onto the dock, Luis was already waving frantically. "The engine started!" We untied the skiff and pushed away. The moment we cleared the lighthouse, the fog rolled in. Within seconds, the entire structure disappeared. Stone, dock, light gone. Only empty ocean remained. 3 days later, the Navy classified the incident as an unexplained maritime disappearance. The lighthouse officially never existed. The order never contacted me. That bothered me. Usually someone asked for a report. This time, silence, almost as if someone already knew what I'd found. Back at the cabin, I opened my field manual. Hunter's field manual. Entry number 002. Species: Siren Drake. Threat level: Crimson. Classification: Apex amphibious predator. Diet: opportunistic carnivore. Primary prey appears to be humans in coastal environments. Primary hunting method: creates false rescue scenarios using perfect vocal mimicry. Targets individuals driven by empathy. Rarely pursues fleeing prey. Prefers ambush within established feeding territory. Behavioral notes: exceptionally intelligent. Demonstrates tactical planning, capable of learning from previous encounters. Uses deception before violence. Vision highly sensitive to intense light. Maintains long-term feeding grounds. Hunter recommendation: if the ocean asks for help, make certain the ocean is speaking. I closed the journal. The black rotary phone rang. One metallic bell. I answered. Talk. A calm voice spoke. You confirmed it. Confirmed what? The migration. I frowned. What migration? A long silence. Then, the Siren Drake should never have been in the Gulf. What are you talking about? It belongs in the North Atlantic. My grip tightened. How do you know that? Another pause. Then the voice quietly said something that would stay with me for the rest of my life. Every monster you've hunted has been found thousands of miles from where it naturally lives. Click. The line went dead. I slowly looked back at the field manual. For the first time, I wasn't asking who was opening the thresholds. I was asking a different question, one that frightened me even more. Who was moving the monsters?